Welcome back, everybody, to the channel. It's your boy JP again. Seems like I've been having a lot of these lately. And, God, this thing is gorgeous. As you can see, I have the Red Magic 5S. And yes, that is a real silver plate. Let me see if I can zoom in on that. You see where it says Red Magic AG? Don't know if you can really see that. Using the Galaxy Note 20 to record this, but I got a fan. I got the fan going on in the ceiling there, but let me see if I can wipe it off a little bit there. There it goes. There it goes. Red Magic AG. Capital A, lowercase g stands for silver. And 5S, you know, the Red Magic 5G, that said 5G, and on here it says 5S. Powered by Nubia. And of course, there's your awesome looking little triple camera array with that red ring around the 64 megapixel Sony IMX 686 or can't remember now. I used to be pretty good at remembering. Everyone knows cameras are my weakness, but I was pretty good about remembering the exact names of Sony's flagship cameras because that seems to be what all of these phones have been using the past 2 years. You know, last year they were using the 48 megapixel from Sony, and then this year they're all using the 64 megapixel from Sony. And it's really the software that makes these phones cameras good or bad. The Red Magic phones have never been that great in terms of cameras. They were always good at everything else, but not the cameras. But it's, and it's literally just the software. It's whatever ZTE or Nubia does to the software because it otherwise has flagship camera hardware. You know, the Sony IMX 586, I think it is. It's the 64 megapixel. It's the one that's found on practically every flagship phone except brands that already make their own lenses, like Samsung and LG. You know, obviously Samsung and LG, they're not going to use Sony lenses. I'm sure they have before, and vice versa. I'm sure there's a few exceptions, but on their flagships, they're going to use their own hardware, of course. But these other brands that don't make their own lenses, whether it's ZTE, OnePlus, there's tons of them. Of course, Huawei's use Leica technology, but you also have your Xiaomi's. They use Sony and Samsung lenses, and the Sony ones always end up being better. And I know that's an odd way to start this video off, but I had the camera zoomed in on that silver plate, and might as well have just showed you the awesome looking little camera design. It's nice. Just the way it's designed. I'm not saying it's a beast at pictures, but it's as I've talked about before. It has the hardware too. It's all about the software, obviously. If the pixels are anything to go by, because the pixels don't even have the latest hardware, and they always seem to be the best when it comes to still shots. But that's for another conversation. I'm gonna carry on about the specs here. The Red Magic 5S. First off, this packaging is phenomenal. Has a little comic book style, your literature, your red USB Type-C to USB cable, your charging brick, little sleeve, and the tray that the phone comes in. Try to keep that intact there. There's your box with the specs on the bottom there, and this one actually comes with a case. They never came with a case before. This one did. And I thought that was pretty cool. It's about time, honestly. It's about time. They should have been offering a case like everyone else. But you notice how I started this with the phone face down. I usually have them up. You can see that always on display. And it's actually a really fast in-display fingerprint sensor, even though that just showed otherwise. It's actually very fast. Y'all know I've had that problem before. I always do, trying to do it on camera. It always doesn't accept it. It comes out slow. But just like the Red Magic 5G I raved about, it seems like it's even faster on the 5S. Everything is. And it's odd. It's odd because of Nubia's processor choice. I did a video yesterday on the on the all-new Redmi K30 Ultra. And, considering what the K30 Pro had and its global variant, the Pogo F2 Pro, when you hear of an Ultra variant, the K30 Ultra, possibly if it ever goes global, possibly a Pogo F2 Ultra, you would think to yourself, well, if the Pros had the Snapdragon 865, then the Ultras are going to have the 865 Plus. But they had a Plus all right, but it wasn't the Snapdragon. It was actually the all-new Dimensity 1000 Plus that had actually came out right before the Snapdragon 865 Plus. And if you watch that video, I have absolutely no gripes whatsoever. 5G worked on AT&T right here in Shreveport. It even got band 2 for LTE, which it didn't even advertise as having. And I have had phones, give or take, from Xiaomi that did or didn't work on band 2. And it's critical because AT&T is decommissioning band 5 for 5G. And most Xiaomi phones always had band 5. So I used to always get LTE regardless if it had band 2. But that's no longer becoming the case. But I won't talk too much about that phone because that's why I have a separate video on that. But Red Magic 5S, man, this phone is awesome. I've only had it for maybe 5 or 6 hours, and it's blazing. It's blazing. This is the Sonic Silver. Has 12 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of storage. The 8 gig model starts on Nubia's website for only $579. That is a steal. Most reviews of this phone said it was going to be below $700. It's below $600. It's below $580 if you want to be exact. Absolute steal. I mean, the Red Magic 5G that came out in April, that also costed $579 at the time. If you really look at the competition, if you look at the specs, it's still worth that $580. And then here you have the upgraded model that's the same price. And all they did was they knocked the standard 5G from April. All they did was knocked it down $10. But you can get a $10 coupon for this just by subscribing to the newsletter. I mean, and it's specifically for the 5S. You can't use it on the 5G. So, I'm surprised they didn't just discontinue the 5G. But, they did that last year with the 3 and 3S. And I'm not knocking them. Not knocking them. But, it doesn't matter what Black Shark I use. Doesn't matter what ROG phone I use. The ROG phone is definitely the king when it comes to accessories. It's the accessory king, no doubt about it. Has a nice ring to it. That's why I had to repeat it. But turn it around, accessory king. But as many other reviewers have already said about the 5S right here, and I'm sure it's been said about the other ones, as I have said it in the past too. I'm just not the only one I've heard say this time around. The 5S is the better all-around phone. As far as the gaming phones go, it is the better all-around phone. It just has a better design. It has more features, minus the whole accessory thing that Asus has going on. Without the need of any without the need of any attachment, any accessory, this phone just as it sits just ends up being a better phone. Say what you will about the software. I'm pretty sure Asus is probably a little bit better when it comes to updating than Nubia is. But with the release of this phone, Nubia did promise Android 11 for this and the 5G. Of course, you have to take it with a grain of salt. We'll see where that goes. But in Nubia's defense, that's a promise that they've never made before since they started coming out with the Red Magic phones a couple years ago. This is the first time they've made that promise. So you got to give them a chance, okay? Let's see what they do. This actually has an updated Red Magic UI. The 5G had 3.0. This has 3.5. And I do notice a difference. Kind of like MIUI 12 from MIUI 11 that I talked about yesterday with the K30 Ultra compared to the Pogo F2 Pro and K30 Pro. Huge difference. Huge difference. Positive. And it's the same here. It's the same here. It's very fluid. Like it or not, if you actually go back and watch and read, your Red Magic phones always got the best benchmarks. Not just between other gaming phones, but just other phones in general. They always had better benchmarks. They knocked OnePlus off that pedestal 3 years ago, and OnePlus never regained it. They used to be the benchmark kings. Xiaomi always came close, but it always ends up being Red Magic phones. Always. And as soon as they're getting knocked off from that mantle, their next one's about to come out anyways, and it regains it. Go back and look. I promise you. These phones always retain that lead. And what's crazy about this phone is some reviewers say that this does have the Snapdragon 865 Plus, even though Nubia has stated that it's just the standard 865 that its predecessor, the 5G, had. And according to CPU-Z, it appears to be the standard 865. But it's weird because it how do I say it? I think the Red Magic 3 was the first one to feature the internal fan, which if you watch my video for the 5G, I showed y'all it running. And I may have done it on the 3S and 3 previously as well, because I had those two and I did videos on those. But the 3, I think, was the first with the internal fan. I don't know if the Red Magic Mars had it. I didn't get it. I almost did, but I never did get it. But while everyone else offers little attachable fans, these since the 3, which was a year and a half ago now, always had the fan built in. But the fan just helps with the thermal temperature to keep the processor from throttling back, so it maintains its original clock speed, so it can game longer. Because the more it heats up, the more it throttles, and the less of the Snapdragon flagship chipset, its potential, the less of its potential you're getting. The internal fan keeps that potential going. And Red Magic does offer attachable fans too, even though it has one built in, and it just kind of adds to the effect even more so. But I may just get the Ice Dock, as they're calling it now, for this model. And I'll tell you why. First off, I don't know if y'all remember. The original ROG phone had the Snapdragon 845. There was no Plus or Pro variant of that chipset. The ROG Phone 2 had the Snapdragon 855 Plus. The ROG Phone 3 has the Snapdragon 865 Plus. But the original ROG phone had the 845. And they called it a speed bind version of the 845. And it was essentially, the CPU was overclocked. And it was a joint venture between Asus and Qualcomm. It was just something that they had exclusively with Qualcomm that no one else could use. And it was an overclocked 845. And if you think about it, that's all the 855 Plus is to the 855, and the 865 Plus is to the 865. But in actuality, that's just without going into detail. That's just the short end of it. In actuality, if memory serves me right, it was just the CPU that was overclocked in that speed-binded 845. Now, y'all can correct me in the comments. I never had the original ROG phone, but I did have the 2 and the 3. But the only thing that was quote-unquote speed-bind was the CPU itself, not the GPU. Now, the next year when Qualcomm did a Snapdragon 855 Plus, and then this year with an 865 Plus, the CPU and GPU have been overclocked. Again, correct me in the comments. You won't hurt my feelings. You won't offend me. There's so many things I read, I can't even keep up with myself a lot of times. But the the 865 Plus was announced so late this year. A lot of people didn't think it was going to happen. At one point, it was stated that it wasn't going to happen. The coronavirus just kind of pushed everything back. Not just the Pixel 4a. But it was coming out, then it wasn't, then it ended up coming out, and we didn't really. It was very short notice, and and I'm sure Red Magic, along with a lot of other brands, didn't think it was going to happen. So, and they still wanted to come out with their little mid-cycle refresh that they've been doing for the past couple of years. They're not the only ones. OnePlus is going to do it with the 8T. They they just kind of stuck to the original A65, not knowing if there was going to be an A65 Plus. And if you watch benchmark videos, and there's a couple of them, the Red Magic 5S beats the ROG Phone 3. It beats the ROG Phone 3 in benchmarks. And I'm not talking about, I realize there's ROG Phone 3s with the Snapdragon 865, and then there's ROG Phone 3s with the 865 Plus. You have different versions, the Strix editions, the Tencent Games editions. It's weird, and Asus has made it even worse. It was already confusing last year. They made it even more confusing. And I did a video on that too before the Redmi K30 Ultra. If y'all haven't seen that, check it out. But they have benchmarked this with the 865 Plus version of the ROG Phone 3, the one that everyone wants, or would want anyways, if they're interested in that phone. And this phone beats it in benchmarks. What they have done, to my knowledge, is the internal fan that this phone already has, it's faster than the 5G. The exhaust outlets are also they're also thicker on this phone. I don't know if it's that one that's necessarily bigger. It doesn't look bigger than the 5G, the standard 5G, but this one does for some reason to me. I don't know if you can see that. And while we're on this side, there's your air triggers and your volume rocker and power button. And of course, that's your game mode switch, your headphone jack, and USB Type-C speakers. But Red Magic has I'm trying to get back on track here, y'all. I'm sorry. The cooling fan on this one, it's faster, and the exhaust, the heat extractors are bigger. It does, and then it has the silver plate. That's the silver plate for added cooling, even more cooling. They call it Trinity cooling. And what all this amounts to, basically, what I'm trying to spit out, is that on this phone, the 5S, the internal fan does more than just keep the temperatures down and keep the processor from throttling. It essentially overclocks the CPU. Okay? And the iStock, the attachable larger fan, if you read about it, they refer to it as a GPU booster. It obviously helps overclock the GPU, while the internal fan helps overclock the CPU. So basically, the phone as it sits is kind of like an 865 variant of what Asus did with the 845 a couple years ago. And then with the Ice Dock, everything's overclocked then, the CPU and GPU, like the 865 Plus. Now, I mean, no one wants to carry around an attachment to overclock everything. I realize that. But you gotta admit, that's a pretty impressive feat, the way that they did all of that. Because part of the reason, too, why Red Magic's phones overclock, not overclock, but clock higher than everyone else's phones all the time, is because of their optimization. They may not get the latest updates. They may be behind Asus when it comes to that. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not sure about it. I think Asus's track record did get better, because I recall the ZenFone 6 already getting updated, and then the 5S before that, I think it was called the 5S, got updated. Has kept the latest Android updates. And I know that the ZenFone 7 is fixing to come out, which may end up being a better deal than the gaming counterpart, the ROG Phone 3. That remains to be seen, because I was always a fan of the ZenFones as well. But rather or not these phones get the latest major OS updates, one thing you can't take away is their optimization. These phones are ZTE, Nubia, Red Magic, whatever the company wants to go by. They do a very good job with optimization. I know I read comments on the Red Magic 5G people complain about the software, but I don't see how. Besides it not getting timely updates, it does have a few glitches. I noticed even with the 5S here, there's a few grammar mistakes that I've noticed. They always trip me out because they're always different from the last one, and it's just and I always seem to find them. It's like, man, really? Like, it is what it is, though. I still know what it is or what I'm selecting. It's not that big of a deal. But these phones, they always seem to have fantastic optimization. And the Red Magic UI 3.5 here on this phone is noticeably better than the Red Magic 5G, despite it just being a very mild, what most people would describe as a mild update. Honestly, this is a major update. There's so much about it that the fluidity of it just seems so much better. It does have the 144 hertz refresh rate. A lot of people do say that it has the same hidden 160 hertz mode that was found with the ROG Phone 3. I don't know how true that is. But I watched a really good review on this phone yesterday by someone from overseas. It's in the UK. He speaks English very well, but you can tell he has that old English accent. I've watched plenty of his videos in the past, but the review he did on this phone, I can't think of his name, but the review he did on this phone was fantastic, and he kept saying that it has the A65 Plus. So I mean, it doesn't. But you'll never tell. It's faster than any other standard A65 phone you'll use, and the benchmarks show it actually beating A65 Plus phones. I mean, this phone is a monster. It's so affordable. Is it worth the upgrade if you have the Red Magic 5G? Probably not. But honestly, if you're a tech freak, absolutely. Because, okay, Red Magic phones, they don't hold as good a value as a OnePlus phone or a Samsung. I get that. But you should still be able to sell that 5G. I mean, it just came out in April. It's not an old phone. You should be able to still sell that phone on Swappa or eBay for $350. And this phone is $580. I mean, granted that $200 might still be a kicker. I totally get it. Totally get it. This is a hobby to me. I'm not a regular person, when it comes to phones here and stuff. So, just, if I did a video on my vehicles, you'd probably flip out as well. I tend to do a lot of upgrades there too. And I do work my butt off. I earn every bit of it, I promise you. Never had it handed to me. But anyways, y'all, this video was I just wanted this to be more informative. Sorry it's so long again, like the K30 Ultra, but it's a lot of the same as the 5G, and I kind of went more in detail with that. But this 5S is bad. I mean, it's sweet. The silver plating for cooling, the Trinity cooling with the bigger vents, the bigger heat extractors, and the faster fan. The attachable ice dock that's supposed to be a GPU booster. This phone also has 55-watt charging. And you know what, too? That the build quality on this seems better for some reason. The Red Magic 5G was the first Red Magic phone with an all-glass design front and back. It was a departure from the all-metal phones that they were previously. And I was skeptical at first, but I ended up loving the 5G. It wasn't a matte finish, but it was slippery, no doubt, and it didn't come with the case. So I did end up ordering a case for it, and that case took forever to come in because I could only find it from China. And I always got afraid of it slipping out of my pockets because it did before, and I didn't want it to scratch. And that was, and that's why I just didn't carry that phone around a lot as much as I loved it. And one of the reasons I love this phone so much more, beyond the upgrades, whether you think they're major or not, is obviously it's a different color than my 5G, but Nubia always switches the colors with their mid-cycle refresh. They always go backwards on them, if that makes sense, or they introduce one new color and then another one is backwards. Like they have a post for the 5S, but I think the colors are reversed from the 5G. And if they're not, they have done that before, previously, more than once. But this Sonic Silver is that matte back that everyone is beginning to come, that frosted back. That's what I mean, that frosted back that everyone is starting to come out with, and customers are really starting to like. It doesn't feel slippery whatsoever. The back is not a fingerprint magnet. It's glass. It's Gorilla Glass 5, but it feels so nice in the hands. Ladies, you absolutely freaking know the procedure here with this phone. No doubt about it. And if you don't, you can get out of here. No offense, ladies. I don't really talk to you like that. But this phone comes with a case, but it doesn't really feel like it needs one like the 5G did. The 5G was so freaking buttery slippery. And I love the design over the metal. It was just so elegant looking, something you didn't expect from a gaming phone, but it still kept the gaming, looks. It still had the RGB lighting on the back. You notice that this one doesn't have that. There's no RGB on this one. But they did that for the silver plating, because this is actually going to help you in gaming. That RGB lighting does not. It's just all for looks. That does nothing for your game. If anything, it takes away from it because it drains the battery. But they did away with the RGB light, and they didn't obviously do away with it because they made it glass, because the 5G had it, and it was glass. It did have less RGB. I did notice that they started getting rid of it with the 5G, and then they ended up getting rid of it altogether with the 5S. But it's for a greater purpose. It's for a greater good. Because you have to admit, that silver plating, not only does it look absolutely phenomenal and freaking gorgeous, it's so different. Not just different than any other gaming phone, but different than any other phone, period. But this is actually helpful to you. Believe it or not, it's more helpful to you than the RGB lighting would ever be. And it has this frosted feeling. It feels fantastic. No case needed, even though they included one this time, which they should have did with the 5G, honestly, because it needs it more. The 5G was Gorilla Glass 5 or 6, front and back. I think it was 5. And this one is the same, front and back. If that was 5, this is 5. If that was 6, this is 6. Or if this was 6, that was 6. You get what I'm trying to say. But it just, this frosted matte finish, the silver plate there, and just the overall, even though this phone has a fan built in, which none of the other ones do, none of the other gaming phones do, they still manage to keep this phone thin. This camera does it no justice. I mean, I know it looks thick, and don't get me wrong, it is thick. It has a freaking fan built in, absolutely. But they curved the phone so elegantly. It fits in your palm. And unlike the 5G, it doesn't feel like it's going to slip out like a stick of butter. See, they made a fantastic design even better. They had just came out with the design, and then they added to it, I think. Because I did like the design of the 5G, as long as you had a case for it. A clear one so you could show it off, of course. Because it was a gorgeous phone to look at. It still is. But I like this one so much. I never use the RGB lighting anyway. Every time I think I do, I end up turning it off. And it's before it even begins to drain my battery. It's cool. I'm not saying it's useless. It definitely adds to the effect. But it was never my thing. Even when I've had gaming laptops, I never use it. So, it's just there for looks. And I love the looks of phones. That's why I love clear cases, as you've heard me say many, 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 many times. But the RGB lighting isn't my idea of looking nice and stuff like that. It's never my thing. But, this phone, it's the same build quality. They just use a different texture on the back. But it's that little detail that just makes this phone feel that much more premium than the 5G already felt over its predecessors and their cold metal designs. I am digging this 5S. It is blazing fast. I'm enjoying it more than the ROG Phone 3, to be perfectly honest with y'all. Seriously. The interface is smooth. It's amazing. It feels faster. I love it, man. I love it. It is what it is. Anyways, check out my other videos, y'all. This phone actually comes out on Wednesday, by the way. So y'all check it out. Holla at your boy. Hit me up in the comments. Don't be too hard on me. I know it's another long one. You notice in my titles, I quit putting quick overview. I just put overview now because, well, they're not quick. There's other reviewers that go more in detail and make it the same length. But, by the way, as far as frequencies, this has all the frequencies except band 71. It may have it, though, because I've seen that before. So, don't be surprised if it does, because it also has 5G for AT&T, even though it only lists band 41 for T-Mobile Sprint, and another one that's used overseas, 70... it's either 77, 78, or 79. It's one of those three, and then 41. But it has band N2, N5 for AT&T. It has N66, N71. Obviously, I already said N41, so it works on T-Mobile and AT&T for LTE, or for that with that as well, but 5G as well. Sprint, if you're still on Sprint service. I knew people that had the 5G that were using it on Sprint with and were getting 5G. Online, of course, not in my area. But anyways, y'all check this phone out. Don't overlook these. Red Magic phones are freaking gems. You can't expect, timely updates. The phones don't even cost $600, but offer freaking $1,000 to $1,200 worth of specs. Half the price. Be easy, y'all, for real. It's not that critical. But check it out. It comes out Wednesday, September 2nd. Today's August 31st. I got it a couple days early, so I wanted to quickly do this video for y'all. I had a couple of other phones that were supposed to be in front of this, but I wanted to do this really quick. Those other phones that I have coming are the blue G90 Pro gaming phone. On the cheap side, and yes, it is nice. I'm gonna give y'all a spoiler alert. It's nice. And I also have the standard Galaxy Note 20, the one that's catching all the flack right now, the one that's very controversial. I'm here to tell y'all, being somebody that's not a big Samsung fan, the standard Note 20, it's what's up. It's what's up. I also have the TicWatch GTX coming in hopefully sometime this week as well. So, anyways, y'all be on the lookout. Hit me up in the comments. As always, I appreciate y'all. Much love. Holla at your boy JP. And I'm out.